Anxiety creates a barrier between ourselves and God. This letter opens with an expression of delight from Screwtape over what Wormwood has communicated about the patient. There's a chance that this young man may be called up to military service. Remember that these letters were written in the early 1940s.
We want him to be in the maximum uncertainty, so that his mind will be filled with contradictory pictures of the future, every one of which arouses hope or fear. There is nothing like suspense and anxiety for barricading a human's mind against the enemy. He wants men to be concerned with what they will do. Our business is to keep them thinking about what will happen to them.
Anxiety creates a barrier between ourselves and God. This is why the devils want us to focus on what will happen to us, and why God wants us to focus on what we will do. You can see why. We have control over what we do, and no control over what will happen to us. Worrying about stuff that we can't do anything about just has us spinning. Screwtape then talks more about what God wants when we face an uncertain future. It's interesting that the devils know exactly what God wants. What he wants from the patient is submission to his will. Screwtape says,
What the enemy means by submission to his will is primarily that he should accept with patience the tribulation which has actually been dealt out to him, the present anxiety and suspense. It is about this that he is to say, Thy will be done, and for the daily task of bearing this, that the daily bread will be provided.
The key words in this passage are actual, present, and daily. There is the actual tribulation. And then there's a whole bunch of imaginary stuff that we add to it. There is the present anxiety about the actual tribulation. And then God will provide us what we need on a daily basis to meet the present need regarding the actual tribulation that we are experiencing. So what the devils want us to worry about is the imaginary future hopes and fears for which Screwtape says that God will offer only minimal support. Screwtape says,
It is your business to see that the patient never thinks of the present fear as his appointed cross, but only the things he is afraid of. Let him regard them as his crosses. Let him forget that, since they are incompatible, they cannot all happen to him, and let him try to practice fortitude and patience to them all in advance.
You see the trap that they are trying to catch us in. They know we are going to try to submit, but they want us to submit to the wrong thing. The devils want us focused on the future, where the patient might ask these questions. Will I be able to handle basic training? Will I be sent into combat? Will I be sent to the desert? Will I end up in the Navy? What if I end up in the Army? Should I be a conscientious objector? Would I ever be able to kill someone? Will I be killed? What if I can't get a job after the war because I lost a leg? You can imagine all the things he's going to be stressed about. You will notice that many of these things are contradictory pictures of the future. You can't be both in the Navy and the Army. You can't be both killed and unemployable. If the devils can get you thinking like this, they can ramp up the stress tenfold, and it is impossible to submit to God's will in all of these in advance. And Screwtape tells us that God doesn't have any daily bread for us to use on future fears. Then Screwtape provides us with a very helpful generalization.
In all activities of mind which favor our cause, encourage the patient to be unself-conscious and to concentrate on the object. But in all activities favorable to the enemy, bend his mind back on itself. Let an insult or a woman's body so fix his attention outward that he does not reflect, I am now entering into the state called anger, or the state called lust. Contrariwise, let the reflection, my feelings are now growing more devout or more charitable, so fix his attention inward that he no longer looks beyond himself to see our enemy or his own neighbors.
What we learn from this is that when it comes to our vices, we should be focused on what's happening inside us. And when it comes to our virtues, we should be directing those outward so that they do what they are supposed to do. Be a blessing. You can follow some of the same logic when you consider the patient's feelings of hatred. Screwtape says that the more narrow and localized the hatred, the more damaging it is. For the devils, it's better that you hate the person in your church or across the street than liberals or conservatives, or Justin or Trump. These are nothing more than imaginary scapegoats.
The great thing is to direct the malice to his immediate neighbors, whom he meets every day, and to thrust his benevolence out to the remote circumference, to people he does not know. The malice thus becomes wholly real, and the benevolence largely imaginary. There is no good at all in inflaming his hatred of Germans, if at the same time a pernicious habit of charity is growing up between him and his mother, his employer, and the man he meets in the train.
At the end of the letter, Screwtape gives us his anthropology, the aspects of a human being and their relationship to each other.
Think of your man as a series of concentric circles, his will being the innermost, his intellect coming next, and finally his fantasy. You can hardly hope at once to exclude from all the circles everything that smells of the enemy, but you must keep on shoving all the virtues outward, till they are finally located in the circle of fantasy, and all the desirable qualities inward into the will. It is only insofar as they reach the will that they are embodied in habits and the virtues that are really fatal to us.
In Lewis's view, the will is the faculty of choice or decision-making. It is the capacity to make moral and ethical choices, to exert self-control and act in accordance with one's beliefs and values. So the devils want the virtues moved to the circle of fantasy, so we will want to bring these into the circle of the will. This letter ends on this sinister note.
All sorts of virtues painted in the fantasy, or approved by the intellect, or even in some measure, loved and admired, will not keep a man from our Father's house. Indeed, they may make him more amusing when he gets here. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape.
Thank you, and we will see you next time with letter number 7.